done a survey of that. And then we look like the best place to come for a vacation because we've done such a good job keeping our COVID rates down. There's so many people in the country out of work. What are they going to do? Well, let's go out and recreate. That's what they're being told, and a lot of them are coming here. There's a lot of push on the internet to try getting the RV industry back up and selling lots of things. And so they're all advocating that. Just one example, this RV Lifestyles website for years has been advocating, go out there and we'll show you how to boondock and camp for free. You know, if you click on this activity, it's actually the second series he did on Gold Beach, complete with a map that shows with GPS coordinates, great places, where to go, how to not look like you're camping, but just parking, and even go where you can steal water from the Gold Beach Visitor Center to fill up your tanks. Some new ones, new companies are popping up. I didn't realize it, but those nice Sprinter vans, they're all decked out. They're $300,000, and this guy can't get you one for another 2 years because his build is so filled up. But again, we're there. You're going to spend a lot of money on me. Now go out there and camp for free. These $300,000 ones only have gray water systems. They don't have any black water. So the rest areas are closed. We have no place for them to go. And I'll show you where some of the places are that they do. So we got an influx of a lot of people coming in. There's all sorts of internet issues that are pushed out there. There's no real definitive rules on what defines camping versus parking, and if you're parking in an RV, are you camping? So that makes it very hard for any of our law enforcement officers to, in the unincorporated areas, be able to do anything about it. In state parks, it's relatively well defined. Basically, if it doesn't say you can camp, you can't camp there. But that's hard to tell somebody and very hard to enforce if after hours you don't have that much. Actually, the state parks now have nobody that can police the state parks. So I'm talking about things like Sam Boardman State Park. If you drive through there, late at night, you'll see 20, 30 car camping RVs, and I'll show you some pictures of them. So here's an example. ODOT put some signs up. They come down pretty easy. When people, I didn't see the sign. We've got pictures of a couple of rental ones. And again, they don't have any black water systems. These are really somewhat of a problem because they're inexperienced campers. They just are following what they were told from either the rental company or what they see on the internet. And here's an example. Sorry these pictures aren't that great. I've had to lighten them up because usually I'm taking them at 5 in the morning where it's still, you're not supposed to be camping. This is the top of Hooskanogin. People on the ocean side, people come out there and park, and that's what they leave. And my dogs don't use toilet paper, but I also pick up after my dogs. And you can see they're camping. They've just driven over the side, and it's also a fire hazard. Now, ODOT did just go trim most of that land, but that just makes it more of a problem. This one is really why I'm here, because it's my favorite place to take a quick hike down to the beach, to Secret Beach, during low tide. It's mile marker 345.5.
My wife visits there a lot.
And I was thrilled when I had the Conservation Corps was there at the beginning of the year, and they cleaned it up. They made it easier to go down there. But if you come there early in the morning, it's scary. These people are actually parked in the trail to hide from anybody that might be going by. And there's something about this sign. This used to be the reflective sign at the end of the Armco where you hit. It's been replaced with these things. I guess to identify it. And every morning going by, their cars parked in there. There's no bathrooms. And when I've gone down there, they've used the facilities there, and it's not like they use the rules for dispersed camping where you're supposed to be burying stuff 6 inches underground, not on the trail. It's out there in the open. Had some other problems. This is at the state park, and folks are just going on off-roading, getting stuck. This is a huge resource sink for any of the troopers that have to respond. They may have to hike out a half a mile out and a half a mile back, and then very hard to get somebody out there to recover them. And people just come out there and park. We've had some motorcycles driving all over the dunes, all the way to Crooks Point. A couple of those areas, if it was my job, I'd plant a couple of boulders. People are coordinating their drives here. Here's a group of folks from South Dakota, California, and Arizona. They were there for about 5 days, at least. I think I had to go somewhere afterwards. Didn't see when they actually left. They just block off all the day use capability that we have there for our residents and for the people that are paying for hotels and RV sites. And a little scary, I'm seeing a lot more license plates from places like Florida and Texas and Idaho, some of the high COVID areas. I was worried that some of my recommendations that I had there, if we tighten up some of the push to get people off of the Highway 101 parking, there are no regulations in the unincorporated areas. So here's Cape View Loop. Here's some of Pistol River Loop, where they're starting to migrate away because the places where they used to go are now all filled up with some of these mega rigs. It's obviously increasing, and if they do happen to have black water systems, they may not work. You know, there's some that bucket underneath it. This is the Pistol River turnout for that you're supposed to have signs here. I'm there quite often and pick up stuff to the tune of 3 to 6 bags of garbage a month. That fills up one of my bins.
And you've been doing that for
For the last 3 years.
Yes,
but it's
thank you.
gotten worse, and the amount of human waste has gotten a lot.
Mr. Euler, are there other citizens that are also helping you with that? I remember
At Pistol River
talking.
Park South, there are quite a few others that go and help pick up there, and it's sort of our philosophy is if we make it look nice, hopefully people will feel a little more embarrassed at leaving their trash there. So we try to, doesn't help. I mean, I've learned all sorts of things. The people that you're going to be hiring at the end of this meeting, they're going to learn some things. I didn't know what these e-cigarette inserts were, but instead of cigarette butts, that seems to be now the new thing that has to get picked up. So there are a lot of dilemmas. It's not an easy answer, just close down the area. We've got people that need to have some low-income housing or some place that we can take care of them. We don't have enough areas for them. They've been pushed out of dispersed camping areas. So we have to solve that problem. Semis used to be able to park there. You put too much signage, they're a lifeblood of bringing gasoline and food stuff to us. So we have to make sure, maybe when the rest area is open, they'll be able to do their 4-hour stop as needed. And then, will we be alienating some of the people that is the hospitality industry lifeblood? They thought they could get stuff for free, but at least they maybe are buying gas and groceries. Some of these big rigs, I sort of doubt it. They're going to Costco, filling up their tanks, and doing all their shopping on the road. And then this has already happened even without enforcement, because there's so many of them. Potential near-term solutions. I'm not an expert and don't understand all the nuances between the parking rules in the cities and what state park is responsible. But there was a lot of sign that ODOT put up there. At least 2/3 of them have been destroyed. There were some that parks put up for day use without any enforcement of night use. They're sort of useless, but most of them have been cut down that I saw. least the ones that are there for multiple days, need to get moved on. Some longer-term solutions is be glad to work with anybody to figure out what the right wording is that we need to ask our legislature to change. Because it's not just a problem here in our beach town, it's probably with all of your colleagues up and down the coast. But wanted to make you aware of it. I can keep reporting on whether or not it's getting worse, or if as some of the campgrounds open up and the rest areas open, if it gets better. But I don't think it's people now have seen they get away with it. They tell their friends the internet is a nasty thing when wrong information gets traveled or gets forwarded as soon as good information. That's what I had. Thank you very much.
Commissioner Gold?
I would just say I travel from Brookings every day, and I notice the same rigs sitting there every day. And also I've gotten a number of people talking about where are these folks dumping their waste, and that's a concern.
Yeah, I think that was one of the major pushes why ODOT a couple years ago put it out, so they didn't have to close some of our beaches with all the waste that is there.
Commissioner Boyce?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We've done some great research. Appreciate very much. You're a good citizen. A couple of questions. When we first talked about this 2-3 times the last few months, we had a presentation from ODOT. It was about a year ago, and we're pretty proud of those signs. We saw the downside of it. What will it say to the wind skier? What am I? I'm drawing a blank there. The windsurfers. What's it going to say to them?
Kiteboarders.
Yeah, and because most of those folks, I believe, I could be wrong, but they're reasonably responsible. But we're noted for our great mountains, wilderness areas here, certainly our rivers, and then I think almost equal to Rogue River is the tradition of the Oregon Coast Highway and these pullouts. I mean, this was designed in the late 50s and completed in the early 60s. And now it's just changing overnight for the local people, the travelers, all the above. You mentioned you didn't have a lot of solutions, but I think you started the process there of recognizing and offering some potential solutions. Fist River is a great tradition. I mean, the people down there have been the greatest citizens forever. And they're very neighbor-oriented. They're very environmentally minded and protective of that area. So hopefully, if you are interested, and it sounds like you are, we can pull a group together. And Director Smelser mentioned, okay, what is our focus here? And so I think we need to look at those solutions, and whether that become in the form of an ordinance or whatever. Certainly we need to pull in ODOT and Oregon Parks and Recreation, see if there's a way that we can push back a little bit, because I think, as you stated, it's just going to expand and ruin what we have here. And I'm not really nervous, Mr. Chair, about sending a negative message to future travelers. That I think most travelers are going to say, wow, they're policing and they're protecting, and I could be wrong on that, but I think that's my hunch. So that's all I have, and can't thank you enough.
I just want to say also, if I could, I remember 25 years ago, before I lived here, driving up the coast in a motorhome, and it was always nice to know in Oregon.
You started.
It was always nice to know in Oregon, because I lived in Southern California and worked down there for many years. You'd get up this way and you'd be done for the day, you'd be tired, and it was always nice to know that you could pull off the highway and close your eyes for a couple hours safely. But to see, some of the things that people are willing to do here to hide and spend days and perhaps weeks, I actually think we could look to maybe have a workshop together and see if we can get, ODOT and some park people together and start to work on this. Even, like you said, to put some boulders in some strategic places, not for the turnoffs necessarily, but like you showed those pictures down that secret beach, to put a boulder or a post in there so a car can't drive all the way into those roads and go hide.
Stop the off-road.
Right. And don't use a wood post. You put a boulder or a concrete pole in the ground, and they're not going to move that. But those are conversations that we can have perhaps in a workshop through relationships that we have with ODOT and the Parks Department. And
Yeah,
those are my comments.
we need to include our hospitality folks just to make sure that they're not over capacity.
Right.
And having to turn everybody away.
Ms. Schmelzer?
Yeah, I just had a question, Mr. Uline. Have you talked to ODOT or Oregon State Parks about this?
Oregon State Parks, yes, Ms. Padilla, quite a lot, and not gotten, actually started it last year. She was going to look into signs, and I got a whole bunch of stuff about having a survey for Indian issues and things like that. And now where they have 47 fewer people there, they're not going to even talk to me. They just don't have any of the resources to police them. They never had anybody after 9 o'clock on the payroll.
Yeah, my concern is, I believe the examples you showed us are all on state property. And as you know, counties have very limited control or input on those state
That's where I'm
property.
not sure where a lot of them are on the ODOT right away, adjacent to the park. And then, are they allowed to park there?
Yeah, the county does have camping regulations. The ones I know, the pictures you showed, we'd have no jurisdiction over those properties. That's one of the challenges I see with this issue is very limited jurisdiction on this matter.
And it's going to get worse.
I don't want to admit that publicly, though.
It already is.
Well,
By the way, Mr. Chair,
Google free camping,
I have good connections in the RV industry, and like you said, they've got waiting lists for RVs. They are selling like hotcakes.
yeah.
Go ahead.
I'm following what Director Smelzer mentioned there, but we also have code enforcement, our two people there that are aware, and to what extent they might be able to help with ODOT at some point, question mark, we'll see. But they are aware, and I think they'll be glad to be involved in any workshop that we determine to schedule. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I think it might behoove us, though, to at least contact ODOT and find out, like you say, the right-of-ways that go into some of those areas. Perhaps if their right-of-ways are deep enough, they might be able to strategically put something in place to just stop a lot of those cars from getting off into the deep grass. One of the worst fires I ever saw in my life was caused from a car that pulled off the road into a field to have a picnic, and he forgot that his exhaust pipes would light the dead grass on fire.
Yeah.
Just one further comment, possible liability issues for the state, having these folks on their property. I think that might get them moving a little quicker if we mention that. And not only that, our sheriff's department is required to go out and help these folks when they get in problems. Therefore, they're causing us extra costs here at the county.
nothing's free. They're just not paying it.
Well, yeah.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it. All right, next we're going to move on to the SOIB presentation. Kyle Stevens. Morning.
Who are you again? I can't remember.
That's,
Yeah. You're,
even the governor undoes hers when she talks.
Yeah, I didn't realize how much you get.
your third favorite board member, Mr. Grumman, was trying to get here to hear your presentation. So he should be walking in the door any minute.
All right. Well, thank you very much for the opportunity to speak, Commissioners. So I wanted to talk to you a little bit about a quick history of SOIB and what we do, and then a little bit of what the employment issues look like in Curry County right now. So Workforce Investment Board. The Workforce Investment Board directs federal, state, and local funding to the workforce development programs. They also oversee the WorkSource centers, where the job seekers can get employment information and find out about career development, training opportunities, and connect to the various programs in their area. In Curry County, the WorkSource Center is located in Brookings, and then we also serve clients out of the building right behind this one currently. All right, so the state of Oregon is covered by 9 workforce boards. We cover Coos, Curry, and Douglas counties. And then you can kind of see the split between the rest of the areas. Workforce development boards work on a lot of different things, but we develop local strategic plans. We take care of market and research analysis. We convene, broker, and leverage, quite a bit of convening. We do business engagement. We try to develop career pathways and also be that pathway to connect businesses to schools, to community colleges, really identify the need and make sure that we are preparing the workforce to meet the needs of employers, but also preparing employees to find new opportunities. We do this through collaboration. So we have a board that is appointed, and they fit a matrix. So in Curry County, we have two great board members, Georgia Nallon and Brian Grumman. And then we have elected officials from each county that oversee us. So Commissioner Boyce represents Curry County. We don't do direct service, so most of the direct service is done through South Coast Business Employment Corporation. So when you walk into a WorkSource center in Curry County, you'd have the employment department, and then you'd also have SCOBAC employees, sometimes DHS. We partner with the community colleges. DHS is a direct partner. We work with the ESDs. We have programs in the high schools in the area. So we have youth talent advisors working with students, trying to promote a culture of work, volunteer and internship opportunities. And then we also work with other local community-based organizations. And then we do sector partnership work, where we actually convene a sector of like-minded businesses, so in the case healthcare, transportation, manufacturing, and we look to see what it is that they need. Instead of us kind of telling them what we think they should do, we look for them to make a suggestion. We look for areas where they can work together. And so jumping into kind of the COVID-19 related stuff, which I think is probably more relevant to what we have going on right now, I want to talk to you about what your unemployment numbers look like and what the future, what we see coming. So the May and June numbers aren't out right now. So we have April 2020. So in April 2020, we had 17.3%. I believe it's closer to 18.8. So as you can see, that's currently the rate is higher than it was during the height of the recession. And one of the challenges we face is that during the recession, people were laid off at different times. So it wasn't, Mr. Gilman, it wasn't everyone starting the same date. What we're seeing right now is almost everybody became unemployed on March 15th. So when you start to talk about programs that have defined links, you're going to have a lot of people running out almost simultaneously. And here's a snapshot of Curry County that shows your labor by industry. And to just kind of give you an example, you have 8,700, or in May 2020, 8,748 people in the workforce with 1,400 unemployed. I think that the number was a little closer to 1,800 at its peak, but it takes a while before the public number gets released that we can talk about. In Curry County, your labor market participation, according to the Ford Families Report, was 44%. The Oregon average is 62%, and the average for rural areas is 55%. And then employment by sector, so you have 940 people, or previously, that were in retail trade, 680 in manufacturing, and 650 in leisure and hospitality, 450 in healthcare. And so it does break out some other categories, but those are the sectors that have the most employment. And what we saw that was a little different during COVID is that it affected every sector. I mean, everything shut down at the same time. So you have reduction of force everywhere. But you guys in Curry County are very heavy in retail, trade, and leisure and hospitality, which are affected industries. So this breaks it out by industry as well for people that were receiving benefits. So accommodation and food service, healthcare and social assistance, and retail trade are the top categories. And then it takes a look, it also breaks it out by education level. So high school or less was obviously more affected than people that had some college or associate's degree, and bachelor's degree or higher fared the best out of this. And then age group, the number of people claiming unemployment benefits currently right now, it's pretty evenly distributed across what you see in your workforce in this area. And because you have so many people that are working in hospitality, I saw this was a Travel Oregon report that was for June 21st through 27th of this year, so this probably was some of the most current information. And it looks at 2020 versus 2019. Unfortunately, it doesn't break out the South Coast from the coast, but you can see across the coast, lodging occupancy is down 18.4%. So this is something we've been kind of trying to track to see what the tourist numbers did look like coming through Curry County. So we haven't seen Curry specific, but statewide or coastwide, revenue per available room is down 25% over last year, and your average daily rates are down 8.7%. And to speak with what Commissioner Pash was mentioning earlier, nationwide RV sales and rentals are both through the roof. It said that the number of people using RVs instead of hotels this year is up. And so here's kind of the issue. So if you start to see the number of people that are currently not working, here's where I think our concern is. If you have 1,800 people in Curry County that are currently claiming unemployment benefits, in between Coos, Curry, and Douglas County, the Employment Department only has 820 total jobs listed available. Those jobs posted are 202 in administration, 141 in healthcare and social assistance, 82 in retail, 71 in manufacturing, and accommodation and food service for the three-county area, there's only 56 available openings. So right now, we don't have a lot of jobs, and we don't have a lot of people looking. The $600 that's being received through the FPUC program, it runs out on 7/25. So when we start to talk about why people aren't working, with that extra $600 a week right now, the minimum a person could make with the $600 if they were receiving the additional state unemployment of $151 a week is $18.77 an hour. So if you were previously working in the service or retail and you maybe were making $12 or $13 an hour, you're making $18.77 right now. So there's not a great incentive to return to work, and the max would be $31.82. The problem is, I think, as people start to return and as that funding runs out, there is not going to be as many jobs as there are people looking for work. So we're trying to encourage people to return to work early, but also focus on upskilling and retraining so that we can make sure that people can take advantage of the opportunities that are available. And we're also, this year's program delivery through partnership with SCBEC and our other partners is being able to access remote employment opportunities. Survival job is, not necessarily a term we want to use. When you start to think of it almost being like musical chairs, we'd like to really promote that message that it is about coming back to work as soon as possible and not necessarily waiting for the benefits to run out, because there will be less jobs available than there were previously. And so we'd like to continue to work with our partners down here to kind of identify what areas there will be opportunity for and how we can upskill and retrain the people that maybe were affected in service industry, hospitality, retail, to be able to fill the available openings as they come up. And then youth employment is something that we constantly focus on. We'd really like to, get the next generation interested in work. But if this looks anything like the recession, you're going to see a lot of those jobs that were traditionally taken by youth, taken by older employees that are looking for that survival job. So now we need to look for other opportunities to find internships, any kind of work experience to kind of get the next generation interested so that it's not a year or two where they can't find available openings. So we're kind of trying to figure out what the new entry level is. So I breezed through that pretty quick for you, Commissioner Boyce. Cut it down pretty good last night. Does anybody have any questions?
Commissioner Gold?
Sure.
I just have a couple of questions. What are the total resources that the SOEB contributes to Curry County?
Sure. Chelsea, do you know what our dollar amount for Curry County is this year? For participants. So currently, for staffing-wise, we just finished our contract negotiations. So we have one career consultant, which is Melissa Hendrickson, working out of Brookings. We'll be adding a career consultant in Gold Beach. And then we have one youth talent advisor that works in the high schools. And we have a business service specialist that works between Coos and Curry that visits the businesses. I don't know the total participant dollars off the top of my head, but I can send that over to you.
About a percent?
A percent is 17% of our total budget.
Okay.
Yep. So there's a county allocation based on a bunch of different things that comes down from the state.
Probably population mainly.
I think population, wage, it is kind of a formula fund. So we are up 17%, I believe, over last year from what we received from the state and Fed. Unfortunately, we're also estimating we'll need to serve 10 times as many participants. When we look at kind of program design for this year, when we talk about upskilling and retraining, it's different. Traditionally when we work with people, we meet with an employer, do an on-the-job wage match or wage assistance so that you would hire someone that maybe didn't have the skills, we'd offset some of the training cost. Now we're trying to find the most cost-effective way to serve the most participants that is also the quickest to get people back to work or access opportunities that weren't there before.
Okay, one other question. I
Sure.
know that you were working on getting internships
Mhm.
in the high school. Are you continuing with that program? How many interns do you have involved?
So that was our Recruit Hippo program. So that will be returning this year. We were in all three of the high schools. And unfortunately, I would say the third term, when COVID hit, was when we were really just starting to pick up. So we had about 100 internships that we were getting ready to start between the three counties. Is that correct?
If she's going to talk, she has to be at the microphone.
Sorry. So 115 opportunities. And so when it shut down fast. And so we
So here in Curry, you had, what, 8?
8 active internships.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
And they are not able to continue, I guess, because
No,
of
almost
COVID?
everything was put on pause. So we've been looking at a couple of different plans for next year, whether that, I mean, we're following the school pretty closely to see if we do a hybrid or an online or what that looks like. We've been engaging students over the summer through text message, email, some go-to-meetings and Zoom stuff. But yeah, we will be returning.
Okay, thank you.
I believe we just extended an offer to a youth talent advisor that covers Curry.
Ms. Schmelzer?
I guess I just want to expand a little bit on what Commissioner Gold had brought up. I know last year at this time,
Sure.
you know that Curry County was looking at having a youth pathways partnership agreement to get all high school students those job skills and get them into internships. And so it said, you know, we can do that, so everybody kind of stopped.
Sure.
So placing 8 kids in internship is a little shy of what I think we all were expecting. What is your goal number for this fall, so we know whether or not we should continue pursuing that Pathways Partnership
Sure.
agreement?
And I believe at the time you were trying to find funding, right? And we
Oh.
stepped in with the funding. I mean, we
No,
would
we did not
hopefully
do
place a
funding.
lot more. It took quite a while to negotiate with the schools. There was quite a bit of confusion around the two programs, so it took us a little while to distinguish ourselves from the other efforts that were happening and convince the schools that we were ready to go. We now have those relationships with the schools. Our business service specialist has done a pretty good job of finding the opportunities. I don't know if I could give you a target number right now, but I could definitely email you something.
Yeah,
We
I
feel
think
pretty
this-
confident about it.
Yeah, I think it would just help us to know what your target or what you expect, so we know whether or not we should be pursuing other things to make sure the kids get the skills.
Sure.
Because I know it's very limited resources. We understand that.
Sure.
Mr. Grumman, did you have something? Could you step up, please?
I don't know if
Don't
you
leave,
covered
Kyle.
this, but there's a secondary problem here that's not covered in a lot of these numbers, and that is there are people out here that are just not captured. Carly over at the library has been going out and delivering meals as part of this after-school program to people who really don't have many other ways to get food, and she's been in tears several days. There are people basically living, their entire family has been living on the food that's been given to the kids for this program. So those numbers really aren't captured here, and some of it's we have unemployable people who can't pass the drug test. They're missing here. We have, when I talked to Jordan over at the Sheriff's Department, he's working about 30% harder than he used to just because the influx of people moving up from California and coming in from other places that are squatting on property that he has to go out and deal with. So what I'm really worried about here is that we're going into a new phase where we have a job market that's distinctly different than it was 12 months ago. And in that job market, the people that are being hit the hardest are the low end of that market. People that don't have a good education, that maybe aren't legal for one reason or another. They're either people who are homeless to the point where it's not that they're illegal, but they really don't have a residence that they can say, this is where I live, so I want to get unemployment. I'm worried about the effect of those people, and I don't know that we have any programs really in place to deal with that. And I guess I'm kind of a canary in a coal mine here, worrying about this COVID thing isn't going away, so the jobs aren't going to come back. And maybe I'm a bit of a pessimist, but I'm really worried about what happens when the money runs out, the $600 that people are getting that money runs out, that you got people fighting for jobs, and in an environment where we just don't have jobs available like we used to. So I know I've been working a lot with Kyle on what do we do? How do we anticipate that? How do you train people that don't have access to a computer? How do you train people? I mean, right now where we can't go out and into the library and have classes and things in the library or use those facilities to train people, how do we recover from this? So we're having to get very inventive about figuring out ways to get people trained one way or another. And I think it's going to be very hard.
Thank you.
To Brian's point, on the July 25th, a base claim, so once that 600's gone, someone who's receiving $751 a month will start receiving, a week will start receiving $151 a week. So it is a significant drop.
Commissioner Boyce?
Thank you. Could you go back to one of your original slides there, Kyle, that showed the Oregon map, please?
Yep.
Just a question. It's the different sections in Oregon on the Workforce Investment Boards. We met in Florence, and you want to give just a little background on why we met there and the pitch that Northwest Workforce Investment Board gave to us and how they're doing up there?
Sure. So there was some talk early in the year in December about a combination of the two areas. So it would be Coos Curry, Douglas, and then Benton, Lincoln, Tillamook, Clapsett, and Columbia. So I think that they are now more sustainable. Unemployment rates runs a little higher on the North Coast right now. I did see that it was running 26.
Then the South Coast?
Yeah, 26.8 versus 18.
I had no idea. Thank you.
We actually fared a little better. But now I believe with the additional federal funding that came in for some of this disaster relief, the funding that we receive it's bucketed. So when we receive like an emergency grant for dislocated workers, we would receive a couple $100,000 from the feds that was to put people back to work, so immediately supporting a humanitarian relief effort. Funds like that can make the difference between sustainability. And then it's up to like our partners, the South Coast Business Employment Corporation, to figure out how to kind of spend those funds. So each person that comes through the door is different. Each pocket of money is different. What that looks like in each county is different. And it's kind of a puzzle to see who you can serve with what funding, whether they're adult, dislocated, youth, if they fit into one of our special grant categories.
Yeah, the reason we met with those folks, they were struggling, and they saw our success, your success, that started with Jake, and that you have more than adequately carried the torch forward. And I want the county to know that, the citizens to know that we're really glad to have you here, and you've done a remarkable job. You mentioned partners, and I've watched that work. We really want you to stay. And we're grateful to have you here. And I want to give a shout out to Brian Grumman. He also serves on the hospital board. He's been on the Southern Oregon Workforce Investment Board for 5 years. And he's really tuned into the schools. Former Commissioner Georgia Nallen, I mean, they don't miss a meeting. She is great in participation, and thanks for getting us through this rough time and being available. One more quick question.
Sure.
Nurses training.
Yep.
If you want to give us a little background on that.
Sure. So nurse training is something we've been focused on for a few years. Mainly we had a lot of students coming out of our area that were high school students that were interested in nursing. We had available jobs. We had a pinch point, obviously, with the capacity of the training programs. So we've made a significant investment with about $700,000 in funding from OHA. SWAC was able to double the capacity of the nursing program in the last 2 years from where it was before. We're starting to meet that need. We've also reached out because you not only need 2-year associate nurses, you need 4-year bachelor's nurses. So we've been partnering with University of Portland to bring down bachelor's level nurses and then working on some recruitment and retention issues. So it's starting to pay off. I mean, it's a living wage job beyond. It's the quickest path for a 17, 18-year-old kid to go to school for 2 years and make $75,000, $80,000. So we'd like to continue to increase the number of spots. I think that we're about at capacity. Nursing education will look a little different this year, just because of the face-to-face. So I don't think you're going to see any school increase the number of students they take too far. But SWAC has met their target again this year.
So can you confirm, and this is my last question, Mr. Chair,
Sure.
in connection with South Coast Business Employment Corporation, is your hardest task matching the jobs we do have with available workers? Just meeting with the two of you the other morning, it sounded like, wow, that is
Yeah, and
no surprise.
I think previously, I think that going into this year, I think it's going to be really finding a way to potentially access remote work for our people that want to stay in the community and work here. You know, if we end up in a scenario where we have 300 or 400 Curry County residents that can't find an available job, how do we upskill or retrain those or make available through technology or whatever it takes to allow those residents to stay here, shop local, pay their taxes, but access work from somewhere else?
We did not mean to rush you, by the way.
No, it's fine.
Great job. That's all I have, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Kyle, many thanks to you. Brian?
All right, we're going to move on to the consent agenda. A, minutes business meeting May 6, 2020. B, minutes special meeting July 6, 2020. C, promotion of an employee, Allison Peck. D, new hires for the litter patrol. E, temporary pay increase for the administrative assistant working as an assistant veteran service officer. And F, Curry County Public Transit Service District requesting letter of support for transportation and growth management grant. Do I have a motion?
I move that we approve the consent agenda as written.
Do I have a second?
Second, Mr. Chair, with question.
Yes, sir.
Staff Jesuit, did we get that letter of support completed? You were pretty diligently on that. Yes. So we're good to go. Okay, thank you.
Further discussion?
Council Huddle?
No, go ahead, I'll wait.
Roll, please.
Commissioner Gold,
Aye.
Vice Chair Boyce.
Yes?
Chair Pash.
Aye.
Motion carried unanimously.
Council?
My question was whether we had a copy of Mr. Euler's PowerPoint or slides for our record.
Oh,
It's on the screen right there.
Good, okay.
we can save it.
Yep, thank you
Okay.
very much.
Yeah, we can
Good-
take that off there and put it on.
Good catch.
All right, next we're going to have, we've got about 8 minutes before our break, discussion items, intergovernmental agreement in support of community development block grant. Do you need more than 8 minutes, Miss? Okay. So go ahead, Miss Madison. Good morning.
Morning, Commissioners. Summer Madison, Economic Development. NeighborWorks Umpqua has brought the opportunity forward, making us eligible to receive support from a CDBG grant for housing rehabilitation in upwards of $500,000 with $100,000 emphasis on manufactured homes made after 1977. The reason why they specify those properties or those homes is because you typically don't find those owners own the property they sit on. So this is a mere grant that we saw successfully completed in the county in 2014 to 2016. The city of Gold Beach has offered to be the lead on this grant, which keeps Curry County eligible to sign for another CDBG grant. The requirements for the grant are that we have 2 other agencies, government agencies, assigned to support. I felt it was important that the commissioners consider the IGA so that the grant is eligible to homeowners countywide. As of the 7th of July, it was just for the city of Gold Beach. But now it's countywide, and I have submitted the information to the city of Port Orford as well, and they will be taking that into consideration and signing on this week on the 20th. I'll preface the documentation I've provided you. NeighborWorks Umpqua said that we could draft the IGA in 2 different ways. Either we had all 3 agencies on one IGA, or we could do separate. We chose to go separate because we don't have that commitment from Port Orford yet, and I didn't want to put them on the hook or assume that they would be willing to be that agency. And if they are not, I will propose the idea to Brookings. But given that I've seen so much come from the homeowners in North County in repair concerns that they have with mold and rot and pest control, I thought this would be a good faith effort on behalf of the city of Port Orford for their citizens.
Thank you. Commissioner Boyce?
Do you need help with Port Orford or Brookings, or you're fairly optimistic, though, that they just need the time to follow through and go with you on this, I presume?
Oh, I think, well, I've feedback from the mayor and a city councilor looks pretty promising. I know their city administrators pretty overwhelmed and inundated, but
Yeah.
she's in support of making sure that gets in front of the council. I don't think it would hurt at all, but feedback from the community has been good so far as well. So I have a lot of faith in that. And really just the county's role and the city of Port Orford's role would be just supporting agency. There's no requirement of time or funding, anything like that.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but NeighborWorks Umpqua really is trying not to overlook Curry County. Do you feel pretty strongly on that?
They're trying not to what?
Overlook Curry County with in their service area.
Absolutely. In fact, the longer we work with them, the more apparent it is that they really do have Curry County on the radar, and they do a lot of work through the Housing Task Force and have employees that reside in Curry County. Definitely advocates for our residents and the homeowners, especially the low to median age and income levels that don't have the reserve of $10,000 for a new roof. It was such a successful program in 2014. I'm really excited for the opportunity to bring that back to our property owners, homeowners.
Good. Ms. Schmelzer?
So what you're asking the board to do today is to basically enter into the intergovernmental agreement with signature authority to the chair?
Yes, please.
I'd love to make that motion, Mr. Chair, when we're done discussing.
Commissioner Gold, did you have something?
No.
Okay. I'm sorry. I'd like to say thank you and good work on this.
Thank you.
Commissioner Boyce?
Mr. Chair, I move that we accept this intergovernmental agreement, Community Development Block Grant, Housing Rehabilitation through NeighborWorks Umpqua. Thank you, Ms. Madison.
Thank you.
I'll second that.
With signature authority to
With
the chair?
signature authority, yes, please.
Further discussion? Roll, please.
Commissioner Gold,
Aye.
Vice Chair Boyce,
Yes?
Chair Pash,
Aye.
motion carried unanimously.
All right, we are at the top of the hour. We're going to take our break, and we will be back at 10:10.
Thank you, commissioners.
Thank you. Ms. Schmelzer just left.
I bet you she'll be right back.
I hear the door slam. She's on her way. All right, next we're moving on to 6B, designated properties in Hunter Creek area as public parklands. Ms. Schmelzer?
Yes, as you know, we are trying to slowly whittle down that list of all those county-owned properties and get them either sold or have something else happen with them. What we've been doing this past year is we've been selling properties and giving the proceeds to the Parks Department. We can do that through the statutes to allow that to happen, but what we have to do is designate those properties as parkland first before we can sell them, and then have them, the proceeds go to parks. In this particular case, we have the opportunity for two larger parcels to actually be sold. The value is such that we wouldn't entertain a private sale. Instead, we would go to sheriff's sale. We haven't had a sheriff's sale on property in a long time. I'm not aware of any that we've ever had, but I'm sure we did years ago somewhere. But so what this is, the first step is, in doing this is we would have to designate the property as parks. And then there's additional steps we have to take to get it to the sheriff's sale and then to get it sold. But this is step one, is identifying the properties, which we have, like I said, there are two of them in Hunter Creek. One has an older home on it. We would sell as is. We did, the values are definitely higher than $15,000. I did have the assessor give us approximate values so that we could use when we start the sheriff's auction, like a minimum bid or something that we could put into the sale offer.
Sure, yeah.
But, so again, it's just the first step in having these go to sheriff's sale to try and get rid of some of the properties. The idea is when the land goes to parks, the proceeds would go to rebuild the cabins at the parks. So we're hoping to get about $100,000, hopefully more, but at least enough to get in there and do major construction work that we just haven't had the funds for. So we would need a motion to approve that.
Commissioner Gold?
I just wanted to bring one thing out. There were a couple of emails going back and forth, and I wanted to reiterate that we had legal standing to do this.
Yes, we did. As a matter of fact, last year when we started the whole process, Council Huddle actually had Shayla Kudlak, who we'd use for legal counsel sometimes. She actually approved it and said we could do it. And then shortly after that, we sold our first one. And I think we actually had 3 transactions last year like this.
And then the next thing we do as well is a public comment period prior to going to sale. So people will have an opportunity to come and speak on the item to the board if they have concerns.
One thing I can just add to this one too, because it's a little different than the other ones that we did, and that is these are actually in the city limits of the city of Gold Beach. So when the county sells something in this manner, if it's in an incorporated area, that city has to go on record either with a resolution or I think it's an ordinance saying they have no objection to the county designating those properties for parkland. And the city of Gold Beach has gone on record already. They have approved the resolution.
I have a question. Are these tax foreclosures for failure on property taxes?
Yes.
I personally have a problem with that. I'm of the mind that if somebody owned a $100,000 piece of property and they owe $5,000 in back taxes over 3 years that weren't, or 5 years, however long it is, it wasn't paid, and that property is seized, I'm of the mind that that law needs to be changed. The taxes should be paid, absolutely. Any penalties and fees that are associated with them should be paid. But any excess money from that should go to the heirs and estate of that person, unless there is none. And if there are none that are on record, then that should be put into a trust account and held for, I don't know, 5, 10, 15 years. With DNA sequencing and all that right now, there's a lot of people that are finding close family members that they didn't even know they had. And because a parent or a guardian failed to do proper will or proper estate planning to punish the heirs of that family, it just seems a little usury to me.
Yeah, the county doesn't foreclose hastily on properties.
No, I'm not saying they do. Don't misunderstand.
Yeah, no, I'm just saying, there's a lengthy process. I guess we'd always hope somebody would step forward, but I understand what you're saying, and I think that's definitely something for this, to bring to the state's attention.
Actually, I have had a conversation with Representative Smith about this, and we are looking to bring something like this to the state to take an action to possibly change the law, because I recently, within the last 5 or 6 years, found out that I have a very close relative that I didn't even know I had. And, of course, I would want that person included in my estate if it works out that way. So
Sure.
these are things that, again, with all of the changes in life that we're having now, there's some old things on the books that need to be re-looked at because it would sure be sad to find out that somebody had a close relative 20 years from now that could have benefited from that estate and got none of it. So those are my comments. Commissioner Boyce was kind of up there first.
Thank you. No, I just want to support what you just said there because, and you said it well, hopefully it won't become commonplace in what we're dealing with right now. That's all. Thank you.
Isn't there a current court case about this very issue, the counties being able to foreclose on the properties, so?
There is something similar to this, yes. I understand that the current law in the books absolutely validates and allows this. I'm hopeful that we can, as a people in Oregon, change these laws to update the books and protect families' rights. So we have a motion and a second. Do we have a motion and a second on this?
I move that we approve the transfer of the property to the Parks Department. That's in Hunter Creek.
Commissioner Boyce, did you have a second?
That's okay, yes. Second, Mr. Chair.
Further discussion?
I just wanted to send a little appreciation for the reminder that Director Schmelzer mentioned that this was not done in haste, and that's not the county's policy. And I see Assessor Colin just came in, so he might have something to add to this before we vote.
Did you have a comment, sir? Did all that work and then you ripped it back off?
Thank you, Jim Cullen, Curry County Assessor. Yeah, I heard your concern, Commissioner Pash, regarding the sale of these properties, and balance of the proceeds not going back to the families. One thing I would tell you is before these properties are actually foreclosed and deeded to the counties, there's probably more than a dozen notifications going out to the property owners. So it's not like this comes as a surprise to the property owners when these are ultimately foreclosed on and deeded to the county.
Isn't there also a period that after they're deeded to us, they can redeem them?
Yeah, there's a redemption law,
Yes,
3
there
years,
is.
I think.
And there's notifications that go along with every one of those. And even in the years that they're not paying their taxes, obviously, they're getting 3 tax statements a year, letting them know that there's a balance out there.
And I don't want you to misunderstand me or the public to misunderstand me. I'm not complaining about how we do our service and processing and all that. What I'm saying is with the changes in DNA sequencing and the changes in how we now run our world through the internet and momentary news around the world, that perhaps these old laws that are on the books could be changed to possibly hold in trust for a longer period of time, or have to do a much more extensive search somehow. Those are for lawmakers to make, decisions for lawmakers to make. I'm certainly not complaining about our process and the current laws that are on the books. I'm just hopeful for change, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, if you do decide to move forward and talk with the legislature about making a change, I hope that you will consult me. So, and my concern is that we don't build a bunch of new processes into the law that become burdensome to administer.
Absolutely.
Inexpensive.
With regards to these properties, the only other thing that I didn't necessarily hear you mention was my concern with this process, and it appears that the county has come up with a new procedure as to what to do with tax foreclosed properties, and that's putting them as parklands and then immediately selling them to generate money for the Parks Department, which, you know, I'm not saying is a bad idea. I don't believe that that's what the law intended. It's allowed by the law, but I don't think that's what the law intended. I think what the law intended was that if a county gets a piece of tax foreclosed property, and that might make a nice park, that they decide to make that parkland, and then some years later, if the park falls into disuse, then they sell it. In this case, you've come up with a process that appears that you're going to be using. The only other thing that I would like to see the county do is make the process a little more transparent. Actually reach out to the taxing districts to let them know what's happening with the properties, because they're the ones that are going to be losing the revenues from the sale of the property. Now, most of it, 55% of it, as I told you on Monday in an email, goes to the schools, and the schools aren't actually losing that money, because if they don't get it here, then the state will make up the difference. The others, it's a fairly small amount of money that's going to be going to the various districts. I just think for transparency's sake, and I know that the county's new strategic plan really speaks to transparency quite a bit. I think we'd be doing ourselves a favor to make sure that the taxing districts know what we have going on.
All right, thank you, sir.
You're welcome. Thank you.
So we have a motion and a second. Further discussion? Roll, please.
Mr. Gold.
Aye.
Vice Chair Boyce.
Aye.
Chair Pash.
Aye.
Motion carried unanimously.
6C, order approving Association of Oregon and California Counties dues. Council Huddle.
Oh, sure. Not a lot to add to the conversation. The AGRS just explains that we have handled approval of these type of payments inconsistently in the past. And so what we're trying to do, these payments have been budgeted, I understand, and our rules of contracting say that any And paying a dues is kind of like a contractual action. You know, you're giving money for services. There's not a real contract to it, but it's a membership association. And so this is over $10,000. And staff's recommendation is that any dues payment over $10,000 actually have an order, because when we were trying to track down how we did this in the past, it was really not consistent. And so what we'd like to do is just make sure, because finding orders and finding past transactions, when we do an order and a board approval and minutes at a meeting with an AGRS, we can really track performance, and it's just a real nice way to do things. And then there's no question that we're following our contracting rules either. So that's just staff recommendation, looking for a motion to approve.
Commissioner Boyce?
Just a quick comment. This year's not if these are worthwhile dues. But I appreciate this effort, and I think it's good. You'll find that most of the, reasonable number of counties are, what's the term, somewhat fashionably late. And so I think this is a good effort and wise. And of the boards that I serve on, I think this is number one with the work that they're doing, the lawsuits where we have prevailed. And they, just so the board knows, and I think you probably do know, the payment in lieu of taxes, the SRS funding, this group is lean and mean, and they are working at the federal level all the time. And they have, in my view, a very good board represented by the 18 BLM counties. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll make the motion that we make this payment and follow through with the order approving the AOCC dues to be paid. Thank you, Council Huddle.
I'll second that.
Further discussion? Roll, please.
Commissioner Gold,
Aye.
Vice Chair Boyce,
All right?
Chair Pash.
Aye.
Motion carried unanimously.
Next, we have 6D, proclamation resolution recognizing the many years of service of Carl Popoff. Mr. Boyce.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I feel like the resolution certainly speaks for itself. He's a Vietnam veteran, and it is true. He's a good friend. I've known him for 45 years, and I would like to recognize not just the Vietnam veterans, but the combat, Iraqi veterans, Afghanistan war veterans. We just heard of a Special Forces Army Ranger committed suicide, and we have no idea what these people have been through. And so, as I said, I think it's something we could do every month to recognize combat veterans. Thank you.
Commissioner Gold?
I've given this quite a bit of thought, and this has absolutely nothing to do with Carl Popoff. I think we need a criteria for recognition in the county so we do not appear to have favorites. And I was opposed to singling out any volunteer for the following reasons. I was given the authority from the BOC to honor the volunteers of Curry County before COVID hit. I still plan on doing that, and will do so after things settle down and we get back to our regular meetings. There are many volunteers in the county that have donated many hours of time as well as other resources. By singling out one volunteer, we are sending a message to the public that we value one volunteer over all the others. Just to let you know, veterans will be included in my presentations. Also, Carl was going to be included in the presentations honoring the cities. I had a total of 49 volunteer groups that were going to be honored, and all of them had agreed to come and do a short presentation. And I think by doing this, it appears that we are having favorites to honor. So I'm against this in principle. Nothing against Carl.
Thank you, Commissioner. We have a public comment. Mr. Barnes?
David Barnes. I'll echo what Commissioner Gold just said. I think that Carl Popoff has done a tremendous job. I think that there was a gross overreaction recently, which caused him to have a a bad mark put on his record by the Gold Beach City Council. But, you know, I don't understand the timing of this. This is more of a type of resolution that you would give to someone upon their retirement from office or upon their leaving office. Or it would have been a resolution that you would have put out 6 weeks ago when he was being censured. So either this is 6 weeks too late or you're 6 months too early. But I really question the timing and the propriety of this. So that's all I wanted to point out. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You may have heard the term point man. You volunteered to go into the service, Mr. Chair. And basically a point man in the days of Vietnam was someone who went out usually at night, about 100 meters ahead of the unit, and he would try and draw fire so they could determine where the enemy was. And this is a story I've told before at one of the Veterans Memorial services. I think that anybody that volunteered to serve their country in the military, they're basically a point man or a point woman, in that they never know at what moment they will be called and offer their life, even if they're not combat veterans. And I sometimes get a little focused, maybe too much so, on the Vietnam veterans, not to overlook the service, the men and women that were willing to sacrifice everything. The two most recent wars, we're just now getting out of Afghanistan. I think you honor one veteran, you honor them all. We've all volunteered, and we do it proudly, and we do it consistently. But none of us in this room have served in a combat situation. We have no idea what they've been through, what they were subjected to. And I understand the timing could be in question here, but the more I thought about this, it's an excellent place to start. He apologized for what he said. You know, he's guilty of popping off. But like I said, I've known him 45 years, and I think this is a good start for this county to recognize combat veterans. And yes, I will. My volunteer time is well documented. So is everybody on this board. I think the citizens appreciate it, but I want to emphasize, I never served in the military, nor a couple river rescues I might have been willing to give up my life, but the point is, it's nothing compared to losing a limb or serving in Vietnam, not even 1%. And so he took a pretty big hit, and for anybody to say that he is racist is the most ridiculous, most incredulous thing I've ever heard. And he told me once that, hey, in heaven, there'll be no segregation, there'll be no racial, just together, just peace. And that stayed with me. And he's been serving all these years. Number one, he served his country. So I'm going to ask the board to support this. And this is not to take away from Commissioner Gold's efforts at his election year, but this is a way to start every month recognizing one of those combat veterans. And we have some you could talk about Bill Farrell, you could talk about Ken Potmeyer, you could talk about, there's several of them. It's amazing that they're alive. So thank you for that extra time, Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Gold?
It sounds to me like you want to set up some sort of criteria for honoring veterans every month. Is that what you're proposing? And if so, I think that's what ought to go before the board rather than singling out one individual at this point in time.
I think he deserves to be singled out. If you want to go back to Vietnam veterans, if the camera can tune into the slow-moving Vietnam Veterans Memorial for the state capitol. 58,000 died, 3 million served in Vietnam, 710 Oregonians were killed. 4 Oregon families lost 2 sons in Vietnam. The list goes on and on. So I think most of the people that I know that love their community and volunteer, they are not going to be offended by singling out veterans were willing to die. You could go back and talk about POW. You could talk about tremendous stories out there that stop your heart. So, yeah, I want it to be Carl on the first one because I think he has been serving diligently for 55 years.
Commissioner Gold?
I think you're kind of missing the point. The point is we need to set up a process, maybe once a month if that's what you want, to honor veterans, and then after that process is set up, then go through and individually recognize them.
Mr. Chair, we can start today with this resolution, this proclamation.
Anything further? My comment is that I met Mr. Popoff years ago in church and know him as a very good man, and spoke with him at length on a few times about his military service. I appreciate, Commissioner Gold, your work that you're doing in setting up these volunteer lists and properly recognizing them for their service to this community. And I also appreciate our mayor for everything he's given to this community, and more importantly, his willingness to give his life for this country. Those are my comments.
If I may add, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
His time as 20 years as a chaplain is also no small thing with what he witnessed in trying to help people. I just can't imagine any greater service. Thank you.
So you have a motion, sir?
Yes. Move that the board adopt this resolution, proclamation for the many years of service, in particular as a veteran, Vietnam veteran. Gold Beach Mayor Carl Popoff. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Is there a second? I'll second. Further discussion? Roll, please.
Commissioner Gold,
I'm going to have to say no because of the reasons that I previously stated.
Commissioner Vice Chair Boyce,
Yes.
Chair Pash.
I will say with my comment before a vote that I hope this starts our volunteer process and it gets organized as requested. But as Commissioner Boyce said, let's kick it off with this. I'm fine with that. My vote is yes.
That was a yes.
Yes, sir.
Motion carried 2-1.
Next, we have Board of Commissioners Curry County Resolution proclaiming support of law enforcement and public safety. Commissioner Boyce.
Thank you again, Mr. Chair. Where to start? I'll keep it short. Again, I think this resolution speaks for itself. Portland is in 46 straight nights, the worst city in the country right now. Straight nights of rioting, destruction, heartbreaking. What's going on there? Basically, what I'm asking the board is that, and our citizens stand with our police. Why not make Curry County a sanctuary county for cops? They need our support. So I'm looking for board support here. Thank you.
Would you do us a favor and read the proclamation you're requesting?
Be glad to. Thank you. Do you want the background or just the proclamation?
Just the proclamation.
The Nevada Board of Commissioners of Curry County, State of Oregon, resolution proclaiming support for law enforcement and public safety. Whereas the Board of Commissioners prioritizes the county's public safety employees, commonly called first responders, at the very highest level in carrying out the critical role of protecting and ensuring public safety. And whereas law enforcement is under siege in the United States, and extremist demands for defunding instead of defending their critical work and commitments for community safety. And whereas the Curry County Sheriff's Department is one of 17,000 law enforcement agencies in the United States, joins rural fire departments and emergency services acting in a combined team effort to often risk their lives in rescuing people who find themselves in dangerous circumstances, render aid to the injured, and protect the lives and safety of the public regardless of personal peril. And whereas the time has come to stand up and show support for all sworn law enforcement officers from the Oregon State Police, Port Orford, Gold Beach, and Brookings Police Departments, Pelican Bay State Prison Correctional Officers, Curry County Probation Department, Marine Law Enforcement, 13 local volunteer fire departments, ODF&W, Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife, Game Wardens, Tribal Police, U.S. Coast Guard, U.S. Forest Service, the Curry County Sheriff's Department, and all emergency service personnel. And whereas the Board of Commissioners values protecting all members of our community, the board believes law enforcement is the cornerstone of a safe and prosperous community and is essential to keeping Curry County family-friendly, attractive for visitors, supportive of business, and recognizing there are systematic issues that also need to be addressed by agencies nationwide. Whereas Curry County will continue to maintain the very highest level of standards regarding training and protocols of law enforcement, and whereas the Board of Commissioners refuses to be silent or divided, refuses to allow ignorance, refuses to allow violence, injustice, or hate to prevail. The board hopes to spread knowledge, supports our neighbors, displays patience and tolerance in respecting laws, and supports the constitutional rights of all citizens, and now therefore be it resolved, the Board of Commissioners does hereby support all Curry County law enforcement agencies and first responders, who selflessly serve. This day, July 15th, 2020, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Commissioner Gold, do you have comments?
I think that's a good proclamation,
Okay.
or resolution, excuse me.
I'm just reading one more thing again, sorry.
It's okay.
All right, so we have a public comment, Mr. Barnes?
Thank you again, David Barnes. John Ward knows I fully support the Curry County Sheriff's Department and everything that they do over here. And I'm just, I look at this, Curry County, our law enforcement isn't under siege. If anything, it's well known the support that this body gives to all of the law enforcement and first responders in this county. The city of Brookings passed a resolution on Monday night supporting their police. And there's talked about the training that they have and the things that they do and they don't do down there. And I'm just, I'm taken aback a little bit by some of the wording in here. We will not be silenced. We will, it's just, this is a battle cry. This isn't, a resolution in support for what I'm reading, I'd like to see this reworded and brought back. I don't know where the origin of this resolution came from, but it wasn't a rural county. This must have been written by somewhere else and just, Curry County was inserted into it. But, also where you have a paragraph in here where you're recognizing all these different people. One of the problems when you point out everybody in your list is that you forget people, and those people are offended. We have a CERT group in this town, Community Emergency Response Team. They're not mentioned here. We have Search and Rescue. They're not mentioned. We have CalOR, Life Flight, and Ambulance Services, which are first responders. They're not mentioned here. All those, if you're gonna mention somebody, mention them all. I'm CERT trained. I'm kind of offended that you didn't put CERT in there. There's others in here also that don't pop to the top of my mind right now. But to me, this is just a bunch of, to me, this resolution, I read it as just being political pandering. It's having to say, I'm not a witch, and I don't think it's necessary. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, political pandering is just almost abusive. It says all emergency service personnel. I don't know how that could leave anybody out. Excuse me, go ahead.
I thought you were done.
That's okay.
I actually agree with Mr. Barnes on the it's time to stand up and show support. Maybe the wording of that could be for all sworn first responders and law enforcement instead of naming the groups, because I agree that there are some that were missed and people might get offended by that. So I don't know if you'd like to go back and reword this to maybe think of more departments or more people, but then we still may forget someone, and I'd like to know that this board stands for all first responders and all law enforcement of any kind, so that we don't forget someone. So I just think it might be nice to clean that up. Council Huddle?
Thank you. So there's a couple ways to handle that. One is to bring it back with additional language. The other way is to amend it in the meeting today. If you were proposing an amendment, I'm looking at 1, 2, 3, the fourth paragraph, whereas the time has come to stand up and show support for all first responders and all sworn law enforcement officers, including but not limited to. And then at the end, you just say, you know, if we left anyone out, it was not intentional, and you are meant to be included. Those could be a way to cover what you say. Otherwise, it could be hard to track down every single one. So that's just...
Well, my question was, could it be, it's time to stand up and show support for all first responders and law enforcement officers, period. We don't need to go on and name them all because we're mentioning all of them in that broad statement. I don't know if that's important to you to have their actual names in there, Commissioner, or...
I'm very proud of our city police departments, very proud of our sheriff's departments.
Well, I think all of us are.
But it'd be easy if you make it too generic, I'm concerned that we go too far the other way. I really wanted a united board on this. Call for a battle cry. You know, we might be in that situation at some point when you see what's going on just 300 miles north. And so these are people we are highly dependent on. I like what Council Huddle offered there. That might be a way to, you know, it's easily the age of being offended. I just don't think anybody's going to be offended that reads this and understands what we are up against here. But I would be surprised, very surprised.
Commissioner Gold?
Maybe the battle cry word is a little bit too much at this point. I think we could support them without trying to have a battle out there.
So let me ask you this, Commissioner. Would it be all right if you added into this line, as Mr. Barnes just said, SARS, CERT, you know, a few more? CalOR, add them into it as well, amend it to that as well, with the line at the end of it, and any others that we may have forgotten?
If you want to work that out now and get it done, I would be personally open to that. So the answer to your question is yes, as long as it's not delayed.
I'm not asking for a delay. I'm asking for an amendment.
Okay. Spell it out, please, if you would.
Well, just that, like Mr. Barnes said, CalOR, CERT, SARS, and whatever others that someone here may think of, and add it to it. And then a line at the end, and any others we may have neglected or forgotten or not remembered. Something of that language I would be okay with.
So we're focused only on paragraph 4, correct?
Yes.
Okay, I think that's doable now,
So,
if I'm following correctly.
are there any further comments?
So let's work on that now, though.
Oh, yes. I mean, the language of that, I'll let council work out the language of that.
So if I'm understanding, then we would move to approve this as amended, and then the changes will be presented to you for signature.
Yes.
So moved, Mr. Chair.
Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Further discussion? Roll, please.
Commissioner Gold,
Aye.
Vice Chair Boyce,
Yes.
Chair Pash.
Aye.
Motion carried unanimously.
All right, moving on to 7, Director's Report.
Sure, I'll just hand this out real quick. So because of COVID, we haven't been having quarterly reports. Try to keep the department heads out of here as much as possible, I guess.
Did you want one of these?
But I did want to share some information with you from the department, from some of the departments. What you have in front of you is actually the data from the building permit, our building safety department and the planning department. And what it shows is the permits issued and the revenue compared to past years. We went back to 2014-15. Penny actually compiled this for us. She did a great job. But you know, just I think to note that the revenues are the highest they've been since before. I mean, as far as this chart goes, they're the highest they've ever been, and they're doing that during COVID. So it's great data. They've been really working JJ, maybe even we could include this in the additional media materials or something so people can see that.
Put it on the website, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's really great data. They've really, really done a wonderful job. So, then with Parks Department, it's not quite as nice though. So with Parks, we compared, the end of the fiscal year to the previous fiscal year, and we're actually down $20,000. We believe that's directly related to COVID. That does impact our budget. On the bright side, I guess, we had a gap in employment between the old parks coordinator and getting the new one hired. So we're able to make up for some of that loss by not having a director on staff for a little while. But that program definitely took a hit. So.
Okay.
Have we included this in the COVID-related expenses that the county has incurred?
No, because the instructions say you cannot claim lost revenues. So, you
okay.
can't claim like the money you're losing on TLT or parks.
We're still working on that.
Then I wanted to give you a little update on the Coos Forest Protection Association edits to the Wildfire Protection Plan. We did get the plan back, and they only made 4 changes to that plan. We were waiting quite a while for that plan to get back, but we compared the 2 documents, and there were only 4 changes. They were very minor. So Jeremy is actually going to go for a grant to have it professionally rewritten to get it updated.
Good.
So, yes.
Did we determine if we actually, through the Title III, gave them that $5,000 to work on it?
When I discussed it with staff when we were doing the budget, we did not give them the $5,000. We committed to it, and if we get a bill, to be honest with you,
Thank you.
I'm going to recommend we not pay the bill.
I understand. Great.
And then I wanted to talk a little bit about ORW Architecture. That's the firm that's working on our feasibility study to rebuild the courthouse. We had our first round of interviews with each department head last Friday. We did a full day, 9 to 5, and we have some more coming up this week. But what they've been doing with each department is trying to figure out, where that department feels they should best be located. Like, should you be by the DA, or are you more fit to be by meeting rooms, and have them kind of work through that conversation. And then the second step of that was then to say, well, how much space do you need? Who needs an office? Who can get by with a workstation? What size workstation is that? So we'll be finishing those up this week, hopefully. And then we're hoping by the end of the month or early part of September to come back with perhaps some just draft drawings, not of structure, but just kind of showing what an office for those departments might actually look like. So we're going to keep moving along with all of that. COVID, we did, last week the board approved the order accepting the COVID money. So that was sent off to them. So we should be getting the check on that soon. And we have another one we're working on right now that is due by the end of the month for COVID reimbursement. So I'm going to be compiling that as well. And I did want to let you know just quickly that we did advertise my job position. I don't know if we received anything yet, but we did. Julie was able to get it in a couple national publications or sites. So hopefully we'll have some good candidates coming through on that, that we can report back at the next meeting. And that's all I have for the director's report.
Okay. Next, we have our commissioner report. Commissioner Boyce.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Real quick, well, no, not so quick, but I'll go as fast as I can here. Edward McGlone, chief guy with DeFazio. He's well aware. I made sure that the work that you've been doing when it comes to the Portable Beach in particular. And I had one citizen write, it would be nice to know if the larger Coast Guard boat, and I think you're well up on this, will be able to operate out of our port so that they can cross and go out in the ocean. And so I think Edward McGlone is working well on that. And he's got some new legislation that's bipartisan that's related to funding for small harbors and ports that should pass. I didn't hear from him. I expected to hear from him yesterday morning to get that information so I could report to the board, but it didn't come through. But he was very optimistic on that. And so back to your work, Chair Pash. We've got a blended efforts to get going there, and thank you. spent a little bit of time on the phone with Senator Roblin. He's retiring the Coos Bay District and part of the Oregon Coast up to Newport. I just have tremendous respect and appreciation for him. He's very much aware of our Rogue Regional Fire and Emergency Training Center, and I basically just asked him, go to the governor, please, and convince her, if you can, that our fire training center would be very good for Oregon. We do not have a fire center here in the state, and she, between her and some of her staff, and also Representative Brock Smith, going to be pretty optimistic there. It's a lot of money, but in the overall scheme of things, it's not a lot of money. And if the state comes through in any fashion, collectively with the people we've got involved in this, we're really confident that it will open up some federal money, as you know. So I hope to have something more to report on that, but I really appreciate him taking the time and outgoing, and he's still there early every morning, leaves late. We forgot this, and I just want to, back in April, but that month is Child Abuse Awareness Month, so I really want to be on guard for that in 2021. Help with the process of finding foster parents and being aware and working with the schools, working with juvenile, and I just forgot to mention that last meeting, and I didn't learn of it until the middle of May. So even then, we were a month behind or so. Real quick, BLM is, I think, did I mention the category of exclusion last meeting? I did? Okay. This is a letter that just basically supports their process. After a timber fire, or after a fire, timber salvage will be able to go much faster. The Forest Service just offered 3 years later, the last timber sale, and I don't know if they're actually going to get any bids or not on the salvage, because the wood is just not, there's just not much left, but it's close to South Coast. We're hoping they might bid on it. But this, on the BLM side, eventually the Forest Service will follow this, I think, but on the BLM side, is basically saying we're going to speed up the process through NEPA, National Environmental Protection Act. And so what that would mean for the 18 BLM counties through the shared receipt system would be very good for our county. So that's good news. I won't report on it again, but I'm hopeful. On the broadband issue, there's some great work going on there with Coos Curry Electric and South Coast Development Council. And so this is just a letter I wrote that I'd like to bring before the board, and it was a big rush to get this out for state funding through Business Oregon. And so if they get to the next stage, I'd like to bring it back to the board and get full board approval on this. This is work with Sean Gibbs through South Coast Development Council. Back to the Fire Training Center, Cam Perry and I made a presentation to the Regional Solutions Advisory Committee, and that was for $165,000 to get us through the phase 2, and we were very well received on that, and we actually got the committee to unanimously say, yeah, we're going to pass this on to the state. So we're hopeful, Mr. Chair, to get that next $165,000, which gets us into the very serious part of the planning stage. I think that's it. These are just two links, the activity in Portland, the riots and demonstrations and destruction. So if the public wants that, I'm just really worried for my state, and there's a lot of people up there, and even the governor's saying this has got to stop. It's being the worst repeating here, the worst in the country. So we have, I don't know if the public knows, but we have, the last couple of weeks, we've had a drive-through testing where they either do the nose or the throat swab at Curry General Hospital. Port Orford, it's the Curry Family Medical and the Curry General, Curry Medical in Brookings, Curry General in Gold Beach. If anybody believes they need a test, and I don't think this has got out to the public to the extent maybe it would be helpful, they have to have the healthcare provider's order before they can go to the hospital. But so far, we've done 700 cases, and I just think that's really good news. I'm proud of our hospital, proud of our public health, and It's we're not behind in the rest of the state. We're doing really quite well. 3 fire updates. June 3rd, we had a lightning strike, Illinois River Basin. The U.S. Forest Service called in repellers. It was 1 tree, and it stayed to 1 tree. So that's good news. We had a second fire, which really was quite minor, about 10 days ago. Third fire was Sunday. You're probably aware, and that was on milepost 21 Bear Camp Road. The Josephine County, Southern Oregon Forest Protective responded to that along with Agnes Fire. It was a car that caught on fire and ignited the landscape, but it's held 11 acres. So as of today, that's all we've lost. And of course, all the people involved are very much hopeful that will stay. Lastly, let's see. Second to last, Shasta Agnes Landscape. Thanks for your support on that. I'll just read you something real quick here. Gold Beach, Oregon, the final environmental impact statement and draft record of decision notice for the Shasta Agnes Landscape Restoration Project was recently completed and is subject to pre-decisional administrative review. But it's basically passed, and the project, I'm going to skip here, but the project will contribute to landscape resiliency on approximately 7,000 acres of the Rogue River Siskiyou National Forest, and it's going to open up, and this is all decided with the collaborative, 24 million board feet of timber harvest available, and so that is very important for our 2 local mills here through the South Coast to be able to bid on that timber. For the public here, the COVID report, the 6 counties between Coos, Curry, Douglas, Klamath, Jackson, and Josephine, we have 503 cases as of Monday. Curry County has 9. We have one of the lowest infection rates in the state. And so there's been 35,000 people in those 6 counties that have tested. Obviously, most of them, almost all of them are negative, but still 503 is kind of a high number. We only have 3 deaths. Douglas County just got their first death after almost 200 some days, and hit them pretty hard, but they're recovering, and the hospitalizations are for Oregon are 1,300. Deaths stand at 244 as of Monday. The governor's press release, she's saying wear the mask, and I understand a lot of people, freedom-loving, see it as a hindrance to their freedom, and whatever the facts are, with what it can do, will do, won't do, it's not asking that much, and unless you have a medical reason, and there are some medical reasons out there, very legit, very valid, but she referenced the 3 W's, which are wear face coverings, watch your distance, and wash your hands. So I know people are probably a little tired of hearing that. However, we do not want this. I don't think we can withstand another lockdown. And I think this is, I give her credit in this sense, certainly, that this is the next step to keep from reversing some of the progress we've made in the last 30 days or more. So do it for your parents, do it for your grandparents. It's I understand the freedom part of it, but if it even improves the odds 10%, 1 in 10 or 2 out of 10 that this might reduce the spread, I think we got to do it. And so I'm asking the citizens to really be tuned into that. I think most of them are. Hopefully we can keep that number 9 where it is, and hospitalizations down, keep improving on our testing, and get through this. Very good meeting, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Commissioner Gold?
I'm going to be reporting on 3 things. I attended an all-care meeting, and there was a representative from OHA, and she reported that domestic abuse and child abuse has increased dramatically since COVID hit. The enrollment in Medicaid is up by 7.2%. 3% in Oregon are testing positive, most of them from clusters of people that have been gathering together. And she also mentioned that there's really no political will for counties to go back to phase 1. And as far as our local all-care group here, we have an increase of our available grant funding. So profit entities can apply for this. Also, I've been keeping track of the OHA report every day, and I'm sure the rest of you have, but I find it interesting that all of the deaths, I can't say all, probably 99.9% of the deaths that have occurred in the state, all of those have underlying medical conditions. So I've been keeping track of that. I think it's rather interesting that that's what's happening. And of course, our most vulnerable population is the elderly, and so we need to take care of them. I also went down and met with David Marshall, the new school superintendent of Brookings, and he indicated that they're going to be starting with split sessions this fall, and then they'll have sanitizing in between.
I wonder if everybody
Of
calls
course,
it Big Wave Dave.
things could change, who knows. Then I also met with Gary Dellinger down at the Port of Brookings Harbor, and they are working on a plan to improve the port on a number of levels, and also on a plan to get rid of their debt. And he indicated to me that the state is willing to drop the interest. So that was really heartening, since I served on the Port Commission for 12 years. So anyway, they're moving along, and that's the end of my report. Thank you.
I don't have a lot. I would just, I do have, this was sent to me from Wild Rivers Coast Alliance, their annual report. If either one of the commissioners would like to see that, it's available to you. And then we can leave it in the board office if any of the public would like to see it. I would like to encourage people, we have ham radios, and I know it's old-fashioned, but it's kind of a neat thing. Actually, Jeremy Dumeyer here with Emergency Services is looking to grow that group some. I'm actually going to be getting involved in getting my license to do that. So it's anyone out there would like to know more about getting a ham radio license. Well, maybe Jeremy would be a good guy to contact about that. I agree with one of our previous speakers. The unemployment that's being handed out now for low-income people, I'm sure is probably helping to keep them at home, not getting out and getting back to work maybe as hard as they could. It saddens me when I watch the evening news, as Commissioner Boyce has stated, to look at the cities across our nation literally on fire. And our police are afraid to get out of bed in the morning because they might be arrested for looking wrong or saying something wrong. And I know that's an extreme, but I certainly would not want to be a police officer in this nation right now. New York, they're saying they put a stay on how many people can retire on a weekly basis because there are so many police officers in our large cities that are retiring, especially New York. They say they have thousands of police officers that are full-term that are going to retire, and they don't know how they're going to replace them. I'm just, for the American public, I'm sorry, but when I see our city in Portland like it is, and our governor not doing more to call out the National Guard to stop this, to break it up. As I remember when I was a kid, when things like this came up, people stopped it. It was stopped, and our nation got back to business again. And to watch this continually happening is very disappointing to me. I'm sorry for making this more of a personal thing for me, but it's concerning because our kids are trying to live up there. Our kids are trying to be safe as our parents and our siblings. And it's sad to go out every day and wonder if you're going to get a brick thrown through your windshield or your house burned. I just saw again on the news the other day a guy that was out protecting his property, had his weapon seized from him, and he's going to be indicted for it, for just standing on his porch step, holding a weapon to protect his property. And that's what we were shown anyway on the news. I don't know that that's the whole story, but I'm just saddened to see some of our leaders in this nation not take bigger steps and strong steps to protect the public and to protect this nation. That's all I have, and again, I apologize for making this personal. Next, we are going to recess this meeting, and we are going to go into executive session, 1926602A, 2D, 2H, and 2F. We will resume this meeting after executive session. With nothing further, this meeting is in recess. Staff is to proceed as directed from executive session. We're moving on to number 10, hire orders, litter patrol crew leader. After information that we've learned, do I have a motion?
I so move that we approve the hiring.
Second, Mr. Chair.
Further discussion? You ready, JJ?
Commissioner Gold,
Aye.
Vice Chair Boyce,
Aye.
Chair Pash.
Aye.
Motion carried unanimously.
Number 11, under others, notice should be given a list of principal subjects anticipated to be considered at the meeting, but this requirement still not limit the ability of a governing body to consider an additional subject. And we have added an additional subject of the sheriff's hazard pay. Ms. Schmelzer?
Yes, so if you remember, earlier this summer, we discussed giving the Sheriff's Department hazard pay because of their, they arrest people or they go up to car windows, they're constantly putting themselves in danger of the COVID pandemic, catching COVID. So we gave them the hazard pay that actually expired with the expiration of our emergency declaration, which was June 30th. So what I'm asking the board to do is extend that to the expiration of the governor's emergency declaration, which is September 6th.
Okay.
And just so you know, we did, last time we did submit for reimbursement on that hazard pay, and we were given that hazard pay reimbursement.
Do a motion, sir?
So moved, Mr. Chair, for this hazard pay extension, Curry County Sheriff's Department, and related. Thank you.
I'll second that.
No, you did a letter. Yeah. Yeah, that's what I was thinking. We would just do the same form to extend it.
Yes. All right, further discussion? Roll, please.
Commissioner Gold,
Aye.
Vice Chair Boyce,
Yes.
Chair Pash.
Aye.
Motion carried unanimously.
With nothing further, this meeting is adjourned.